Hi, everybody. Thank you again for joining Lattes with Liz. We are joined with Neil Pawlowski, real estate attorney extraordinaire, and today we are going to be talking about how much it costs to buy a house. So obviously you have all of your costs with your lender that you've discussed prior to contract, but we want to talk about what are the other costs associated. So let's just jump right in and you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as a buyer for a home, aside from your lender costs, there's going to be three main costs associated with that. The first one is going to be your attorney fee. Generally in this Western New York area, that fee ranges anywhere from about $9.95 and up. I personally charge $9.95 for either buyer or seller. It's $9.95 as a flat fee. Then in addition to that, you're going to have title insurance costs. Now, all the title insurance costs, which title insurance is an insurance policy just like any other policy, but it's a one-time cost. You purchase it at the time of closing, and it ensures that you have good, clean title to the property from the date you buy it backwards.
Yeah, I would say that might be the biggest question that I get with a lot of buyers. Why do you need title insurance?
It's a very important question. And in fact, the federal forms, when you're getting a loan, they actually put the owner's title insurance as optional. I always recommend my clients get it only because there are mistakes that are made. We do things here in Western New York through title searches where a human being is going to the clerk's office and trying to find everything that is part of the land back to 1920. Well, sometimes things are missed. There could be a mortgage that is missed. And if we close and that mortgage is recorded and the money stops being paid on that mortgage, they can come in and foreclose. And if that was missed, part of the title exam, but you have the title insurance, that could actually protect you because the title insurance company then would have to come in and pay off that mortgage holder, because they're ensuring that there were no other prior liens. So it becomes an insurance company's problem. No different than any other type of insurance policy. Now, the rates are set by New York State. And because of that, New York State recognizes that if you're getting a loan policy, which every lender requires a loan title insurance policy, they're actually going to give you a 60% discount on the owner's policy from what you normally would spend. So it's really inexpensive in the grand scheme of the whole purchase because you're spending tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's going to cost you maybe a few hundred up to like $1,000 one time to protect your interest in the property. So title insurance is a big cost.
Recording fees, what do those look like for buyers?
Yeah, so if it's a cash deal, it's just recording the deed. And in Erie County, it's generally going to be about $185, $200. When you get a loan, you do have to pay to record the mortgage, and you also have to pay a transfer tax, and that's a New York State tax that's required. And it's 1% of the loan amount, and then the lender's going to pay a portion of that, and then the buyer pays another portion. So those are your main recording costs as a buyer.
Yeah.
The seller will have different ones from that.
And then obviously you have, home inspection. Those are going to be all separate from you, but some additional costs to think about as a buyer. A common misconception I think that you and I run into a lot is when we come through a final walkthrough, a buyer's looking everywhere for the stakes and they can't see their property line. If a buyer decides that they want to see the stakes in their new house, what should they expect and how can they do that with you?
Sure. So under our contract terms, it is required that the seller provide a certified survey from a licensed surveyor. However, staking, which means showing the actual corners of the property lines, is not a requirement of the contract, but it is an option. And typically if the buyer does want to have those stakes put in, they can ask for the surveyor to do that. It's usually $50 per corner of the property. So if there's 4 corners, it'd be around $200. If there's more corners, because it's an odd-shaped property, it's literally per corner. So it could go up from there. But usually a minimum of $200 for them to come and actually put like bright orange taped stakes so you can see your property corners.
And if they want those staked, that introductory phone call that you have with the client?
Yeah, that would definitely be something we'd want to know because we'd want to let the surveyor know before they go out there that we want to pay for the staking.
And then any additional costs maybe, that are hidden costs for buyers that they don't think about when buying a house?
Those are the ones we talked about here today are pretty much the main ones. There could also be, depending on lender specific requirements, some lenders require survey certifications, for example. If it's a requirement of the lender, then the buyer would have to pay for that. Those aren't hidden though, in the sense that you mentioned hidden costs, because the lender would be required to disclose those in their closing disclosure as part of the lending process. But the main costs for a buyer are going to be your deed recording, your attorney fees, and your title insurance. But I'd say the biggest cost that buyers don't think about is they have to pay the seller back for any taxes that the seller already prepaid from the day they close till the end of that fiscal year. Tax bills just came out this month for the county tax for 2026. So a lot of times those haven't been paid by the sellers yet. So the seller is going to provide a credit. We have to make sure that gets paid in full at closing. They do add additional costs, is either paying the taxes that are due and the seller is going to pay you their portion, or we have to pay the seller back. So right now we're smack dab in the middle of most school years, because school years run from July 1st to the end of June. And so you're going to be paying the seller for the school tax from the date of closing until that June 30th date. So a lot of times clients ask, why am I spending more money from what we had talked about earlier? And it's usually because the taxes weren't disclosed.
And the way they fall.
Correct.
Yeah, perfect. That's helpful. That, I think, sums it up. Thank you so much, Neil Pawlowski, for joining. If you have any other questions, feel free to DM me. All of his contact information is going to be in the bio. So again, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.